In this video, we're looking back at which manufacturers had the most exposure on lead cards in 2021. Discmania and MVP had some notable wins, but was it enough to dethrone the big brands? Let's find out. Now, to figure out which manufacturer had the most showtime, we've got to set some parameters. What I was looking at was players who finished top 5 in a tournament. These are guys that should have been talked on coverage, shown on coverage, and so these guys are going to be notable and getting, I guess you would call, free advertisement from just playing very well. So 50 different players actually finished tied for 5th or better in tournaments last year that I charted. That equated to 11 different manufacturers. So I made a simple scoring system to account for placement and went to work seeing which manufacturer performed the best. As you can see, you get 10 points for first, 5 points for second, down to 5th place. For ties, I simply added up those points together and divided by all the athletes who had tied in that position. Now, some of you are probably saying, but majors have more coverage. What about Worlds? I agree with you. For Worlds and USDGC, I doubled the allotted points based on the extra publicity that comes with those two events. This next year, I will be doing this as well with the Champions Cup and the European Open. Now, on to the results. We'll start with some of the smaller brands. OTB, DGA, and Westside all only had one representative that made any type of splash last season. And outside of LaCastro's win at Waco, none of these manufacturers or companies had any major impact throughout the season. Infinite Disc has 2 athletes, but overall scored less points than Westside, even with Gibson's 2nd place finish at the Tour Championships. Conrad, of course, was a big name this year winning Worlds, but without the throw heard around the world, MVP would not have had this big of a year. Now, it's been a while since Latitude had a really big name here in the States, but Emerson Keith and O'Reilly were able to put some decent numbers to help Latitude stay in the mix throughout the year. Prodigy and Discmania both have a group of very notable players, but I feel these two teams are headed in different directions in 2022. Prodigy decided to back KJ USA, Kevin Jones, and let Dickerson and Matty O move on this offseason. And as you can see, they actually picked the player who was 3rd in market share this last year. Now, they've got some other young pieces that can absolutely perform and get some exposure for them next year. But I think losing 2 of the most effective MPO players is going to hurt their brand. Discmania, on the other hand, still has their big 3, along with Casey White, who seems to be growing in popularity and should be able to compete for a few top 10s this next year. Though Lizotte didn't have a top 5 finish in 2021, he was coming off of injury and we knew he would have a down season. I expect Lizotte to have a bounce back year. Mix that in with Eagle and Kyle Klein, Discmania is bound to have a great 2022. Talking about having a great 2022 season, Discraft is going to be a threat. They've been building a deep roster for the last couple of years and just signed another top 5 talent. They finished with 13 different athletes getting a top 5 finish, trailing only Innova. Macbeth and Hammis carried Discraft with multiple wins each and are getting help this next year with Discraft making multiple signings, including Chris Dickerson. And then there's Innova, winners of the manufacturer market share for 2021, carried by Player of the Year Ricky Wysocki, who scored more than 8 other companies mentioned in this video. Innova, the biggest team on tour, hit big with Nathan Queen taking home the Tour Championship. Innova also had help from steady top 5 threat Calvin Heimberg, but with some of their other big names underperforming this last year, it's making everybody a little worried about their future. They lost over 50% of their market share from lead cards this past year. Ricky Wysocki, Mason Ford, and Andrew Marweed are all leaving, and it's going to take a lot of help from their young guys as well as some of their older pros to make it up. Now, if you've made it this far, you're probably yelling at me in the comment section, what about dynamic discs? Well, if you're a fan of theirs, you should be rejoicing because 2022 is going to be a much better year after finishing with zero, let me repeat, 0 appearances in the top 5 this past season. Chris Clemens, Eric Oakley, and Ty Love all failed to break out this year and resulted in a very quiet year for DD. This soon will be forgotten. As most of you know, Ricky Wysocki is headed over to Dynamic Discs. They also signed Mason Ford and Gavin Rathbun. And honestly, will probably make a push for that top spot in the 2022 manufacturer market share. Now that we've gone through each company, here is the final breakdown. Like I said, Innova stole the show with more than 35% of the market share, and Discraft was sitting in second with just below 24%. More than likely, we'll be seeing a new champion this year, and I'll be doing weekly updates over on my Instagram. But for now, here's just a quick recap of some of the major names of moving companies. You've got Innova losing Wysocki and Mason Ford to Dynamic Discs and Andrew Marweed to DGA. Discraft loses Redolin to Infinite Discs, and Discmania is losing Gavin Rathbun. Dynamic is losing Eric Oakley, and Prodigy is losing Dickerson and Matty O. LeCastro is leaving Westside, but hasn't announced where he's going yet. And DGA is losing Matt Bell, who is their only athlete to score a top 5 finish in 2021. Comment below which company you think will win the 2022 manufacturer market share crown. All right, after one of the biggest offseason disc golf has ever seen, 2022 is going to be something to watch. Subscribe and follow my socials for stat coverages all season long.